All right, we are down to the last couple HTML only videos, and we're gonna start doing some neat design things so our pages don't look so basic. We are going to do forms right now. Now the forms won't actually work. You won't be able to send anything with them yet. We will cover that later on to actually send that so you can get your contact form emails or be able to send it the data wherever. But for now, we are just going to write out the forms. So that being said, let's make a form tag. Now, form tags actually have an action and a method. So it would be form, and then inside of that, you would have action equals quotes. And the action would be something like a PHP style. So to be like, send email.php. That would be the action. And then there's a method, which would be, post or get. Now, that is something that we will discuss later on. It's more of a theoretical or informational lesson about how the web works. We're not going to go over that right now, just so we can just put this on the page. So just bear with me. Next, we will have an input. So you have input, and you have a type. So the types, you will run into different things like password. There's lots of different types. There's going to be submit. There's going to be username. There's password. So there's lots of different types. For right now, we're going to use text, so we'll say equals text. And then what we'll do is we'll add a name. So the name of this input is name. So this is going to be your name, right? So how would you be able to tell what this is for? What you would do is you would add a label, right? And that label would have, well, I actually do want that close tag. Our label would have to be for name. So the for of the label will be binded by the name. And that label would be enter your name. All right. So now these two are linked together. And so now if I were to shift alt down, so I copied and pasted that, and I'll say enter your subject. So our name would be subject, and for would be subject. So enter your subject. And let's put a BR in there so it goes down to a new line, which there is a better way to do that, but we'll talk about that later. I'm going to actually add another one just so that looks kind of sloppy. So enter your name, enter your subject. And then what you also could have in there is a text area. So text areas are like a message box that's resizable, that's big. So that is just going to be label, and we'll do for message, and enter your message. Or you could just have message, which I think most sites don't say enter your, it just says message, subject, or name, but it doesn't matter. So there's that, and of course we need our BR, and they'll give us some space, and then we need the actual text area. So text area is the name of the box. You don't need a type on it, and it just needs a name. So the name is message. And you hit enter there, and then you're going to see that it is resizable, so you can kind of enter as much as you want. Now, text areas, there's also rows and columns, so you can say rows equals 6, so that'll give it 6 rows, 12, so rows 12 is there, and then let's say 40. So if say you wanted really big essays, you could write that. So let's move this back to 12. And then there's calls as well. So COLS there, and equals, let's say 50. And put save, and you can see it's nice and big. So they can resize it themselves, so it's not like it's that big of an issue. But it is, if you wanted a preset to look nice or something, you could do that as well. Now we need to get that data somehow. So we would have to submit. Actually, let's add in one more type. Let's do input type, and we'll do radio. Input and type radio. So you should know, well, we need our BR. This will be much easier once we start hopping into some CSS. So BR radio tag is radio buttons. So to make them different, we would put name equals color. So we're gonna put our favorite color. So color, and then for this we're gonna do label. So could type label for, and the difference for this is going to have different IDs but the same name, so that when you submit the data, it grabs the ID of them. And these all should have IDs, which we'll add in a moment. But let's say for red, all right? And then we'll say this is red. So that is our first color in our toggle. So we can turn that radio button on, right? So we're gonna Shift Alt down that, and now we have red, red, and we're going to change this to blue. Now the name of these will be the same, but the for is going to be different, right? And now when we do these, they can only be one or the other because they have the same name. Now, for the data to be sent and differentiated, you're going to have ID. So ID blue. So now when you grab the data in the back end, when you add PHP, it will know the difference by using, hey, this is set to red. Hey, this is set to blue. So all of these technically should have ID. So this would be, ID message, and you would have, a lot of times, most times, your names and IDs will be the same. So input ID equals subject. Fat fingering those, and then for ID for the input would be name. So ID equals name. So they all have IDs. And so those are going to be your radio tags. And then there's also, for options, there is checkboxes. Now checkboxes they work very similar to it. So let's do input type. So now you can kind of see why having separate groups. So we could do groups for forms, which we'll talk about later. But let's say checkboxes. So input type equals checkbox, and ID equals let's say I don't know what to really put in these. So let's say chocolate, because we want to know if you like chocolate or not. And we'll say name is the same. Chocolate. It helps if you can spell. So we have this checkbox there, and we have to put a label on this bad boy. So label, and we'll call it name or for equals chocolate. And then we have to just name the label as chocolate. That's a question. And you can have it check. Now, these work differently from radios, as you can have, hey, do you like chocolate? And then I'm going to grab that. I'm going to grab those. I'm using Control D to grab those. And I'm going to type in vanilla. And see how there's chocolate, vanilla? So you can have that. You can have that, and they don't affect each other. But red and blue stay. It's either one or the other. All right. So one other thing I want to point out before we move on from this is the values of these boxes. Now, sometimes when you have input boxes, people don't understand formats or don't understand what the box is for. So to make it easy on it, you could actually put in a value, preset of value, and it could be whatever you want. So let's say John I think Mr. Doe is spelled with an H. So you can put John Doe and it's automatically there, but you can actually edit it, erase it, and change it. So, and then that could be the same for this. Value equals I love coding, because you want to tell people about your coding. And again, it's editable. So you can have that there if you want it or not. For checkbox, it is going to be checked. So you would go down and you would write checked, and it's either true or false. So you could do true, and see how now it's actually checked off by default, but you can turn it on and off. It's just the default. So now if I, save and refresh, it's always checked. So everyone loves vanilla, and then you can decide if you don't want it. All right. So the last input that we're going to go over is going to be obviously the submit button. So input type equals submit, and that is your submit button. And we'll do a BR. At this point, it doesn't matter as much because we're not going to add anything else, but that would submit. And obviously sendmail.php. So how it called up that page when I hit submit. So it tried to take all of our data and it tried to send it to sendemail.php, which doesn't exist. So you got this page, but if it did, and it will grab those IDs, be able to throw them onto an email and send it off. And we will be doing that on our final project for this series. So hang tight.